Mm. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. I am your griot here to tell you a story. Now, about 3.5 years ago, I started to do the series. Here we go again with the big splat, right? And I have a number of shows, at least hundreds of shows about the big splat and what it is historically, how we've been there, what you've been doing. Good evening, Bob. Yep. Ed, good to see you, buddy. So, um, I'm never a guys like Marfugal News, and I mean everybody out there. I mean, one of the, you know, first of all, the internet was given to us, invented by DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Programs, the guys who brought us the atomic bomb, hydrogen bomb, integrated circuit, and your cell phone. Your cell phone is a miniaturization of the keyhole satellite, which is a satellite that they put up there in the latter part of the 60s, 70s, 80s. The keyhole is a series, right? And they still have keyholes up there. And what it is, meaning you're looking through a keyhole, right? So they, from their satellites, they can see down on the ground, 200 miles below them, someone reading a pack of cigarettes. They can read the pack of cigarettes, right? They can vacuum in every radio signal. And, they can bounce microwaves off of windows and people speaking in that room. The vibration of the glass of the window can be picked up by the microwave up from in space. I mean, so, pretty much there is no privacy, right? So, we have this motif of a world, right? And I constantly talk about the hidden hand, the unipolar global transnational, uh, you know, oligarchy, fascist oligarchy, and that's what's running our world, and it owns everything. I mean, every politician is owned, and I constantly talk about how this war in Ukraine is scripted. Putin versus it's the war of the two Vlads, Putin in Russia and the other guy in Ukraine. Well, they're both working for Mr. Globaloni, right? Now you go watch Dark Journalist, and he has a cadre of guests who come on. He has lots of different guests, but he has this um, Catherine Austin Fitz. She's an economist, excellent. She has a website called Solaris. You should go check it out. Joseph P. Farrell, great scholar, and he has published, 50 books maybe, and they're all really great. David Icke, he's pretty well known, and a whole bunch of others, right? And and they kind of focus on the Mr. Globaloni, the hidden hand motif, and in all of its because it goes way back to the day of Babylon, and what it is it's you have to realize the dynamic of the theologic religious aspect of this, and so this whole thing, our good friend, the canary in the coal mine, John. He goes on about God and Jesus, and how we're all the sinners are going to be having eternity in the land of vomiting, boiling, you know terribleness, and that's already here. It's on Earth. You just go to Ukraine, it's happening. Go to Darfur, it's happening. Go to South Africa, it's happening. Go to Yemen, it's happening. Go to Palestine, it's happening. Go to Syria, it's happening. Go to Afghanistan, it's happening. And I mean, the way that Biden left Afghanistan, right? Like a light switch, they're, Afghanistan's not going to fall, and 3 weeks later it falls. Of course, we knew we left, and the way we left, we forced everyone to try and get out of Afghanistan, from the commercial airport. I mean, we had one of the largest military facilities in the world in Afghanistan and Bagram Air Base. And we could have told everyone, back in May to saunter over there. I mean, it's gigantic, it's like the size of Rhode Island. It's got mountains all around it. And we have all these military, you know, um, things on top of those mountains. So there's only one way in, and you can fly out, and you can't get attacked flying in it and flying out at Bagram, right? So all we had to do was not close that airbase. I mean, we were keeping the Taliban at bay with 2,500 guys, about 60 gunships, A-10s and Apache helicopters, and drones. You know, we the last 8 years of us being there, that's all we did. We didn't have hundreds of thousands of guys. We had about 2,500 special ops groups and drones and attack aircraft, right? And we were keeping the Taliban at bay. We just left. And when we left Bagram, it's like we didn't tell anybody. We just took all the stuff we wanted. We left a whole bunch of guns and tanks and all kinds of stuff that the only thing the Taliban could use it on is their own people. Um, and so it's like when we attacked Saddam the first time in 91, we were just using him as a ploy. So we could go and get the ancient technology that the French and the Germans were digging up in the Kurdish part of Iraq. So all of these things, the understanding of what Russia was going to do, right, wasn't, it didn't start in 2014, right? It started back um, in 2001. And really, if you go for, 91, and if you really go back to Jimmy Carter and Jigsaw Brzezinski, I mean, Brzezinski was talking all about this, right? And we had to like not only break the Soviet Union, but Russia, because it had so many resources. We had to turn it into Disneyland, right? And that's what we're going to do. Now, if we have to exchange a few nuclear weapons to do it, Mr. Global only be fine with that, right? And it looks like they are, winding up to do that. I mean, you know, Vlad's reading the script, and he is going, we're going to our new Satan missiles, two of them, four of them, two for the West Coast and two at the East Coast, and we'll take care of America. Well, it won't, but it will kill about, you know, mm, 40% of somewhere between 8 and 40% of the American population. And it'll radiate large city, Boston, New York, Philly, DC, LA, San Francisco. Um, but things in the middle of the country, not so much, right? Now I'm on the bop, I'm on the wire. I'm no longer in the deep green. I packed up, sealed things up and turned everything off and the pipes won't freeze, et cetera, right? And I have no idea where I'm going. I am just on the bump and I have no money. So anybody, first off, I want to thank everyone who has sent me something on PayPal. It really helps me out. So we really, really, really could use it now. And remember, that's the due to wake 42 at Gmail. Due to wake 42 at Gmail, right? And anybody who wants to get a hold of me, due to wake 42 at Gmail. Due to wake 42 at Gmail. So Ed, you still there? What do you think of what I'm just saying? You know? Anybody got any ideas on what I'm saying? How about some thumbs up, right? How about some thumbs up? How about some comments down there, So, what else can I tell you? But nuclear exchange is very and the total um, NATO versus Russia. Now Russia's is really they were the second largest kick-ass army in the world, but they haven't really done anything, right? A few things here, Crimea, a few things over there, but but they haven't really. Um, whereas the United States, for 20 years, Afghanistan and Iraq and Libya and Syria and about 100 other places, we have been militarily involved, right? And so that is for us anyway. Our military has been in a 20-year live fire exercise, meaning using our military integrated Navy, Air Force, Army, Marines, special forces, you name it. The space force, CIA, you name it. Everybody has been doing a live fire exercise. So our military is the most um, practiced, you know, and professional, and not that's a good thing. If we had spent, we're talking about hundreds of trillions of dollars. If we're spending like a good 20% of our GDP yearly on making weapons, right, and making harm and making death and making the crushing other countries, right? For our own, and it's not even in our best interest to do this stuff, right? Not at least not our best interest, And people go, "I hate the government," and my reply is, "Oh, you hate your postman, right?" No, all of the, and President Eisenhower, he gave a speech that coined the phrase "the military-industrial complex." And if you go watch that, you can tell how nervous he was, like looking around, making sure no one's going to shoot him that minute. And he made that speech hours before um, Kennedy got sworn in. And his making that speech did two things. It took the heat off of him and put it on Kennedy, right? And and all he wanted to do was make that speech so he could go back to his little town and play golf and wait the next 20 years and die of old age, right? Make a few speeches here and there. But he's pulled straight out of everything, right? But he made that speech because it protected his ass. Because he was so involved with so many things that by saying this, it took him out of the picture, right? And what's very interesting, FDR was in the same situation, but he couldn't do what um, um, Eisenhower did because he was in the middle of a war right at the end. It was pretty much sure. He went to Tehran and he went to the other place where Winston Churchill, Stalin, and him kind of you know said what was going to happen to planet Earth and all its people until the year their little worldview and what was going to go on was for from that point 1945 um, until 2145. That was they started the ball rolling for that, right? Now they understood that there were earth changes that are coming. All the things that we're experiencing isn't coming because of, your carbon footprint, right? I mean, if we didn't keep chopping rainforests down, trees love carbon. I was in Brazil in 2088 and I was sent to. I went there to build a disco, which I did, and it was quite nice. And I've told that story many a time, so I'll tell it again if you want it. But the real deal was in Buzios. You know, it was a little peninsula, 200 miles above Rio on the coast, and it was a place. The movie Boys from Brazil. That's the place that we're talking about because the Nazis went there, took over that little peninsula, turned it into like a swinging hot spot for Euro trash. But that was just a cover. They had a big hospital there that rich people went, powerful people went, and people who wanted to stop being who they were and be somebody else. And they had the technology to not only give you like plastic surgery, but change you like genetically. So your face would change and your fingerprints would change and your biology would change, right? And that's a lot more strange technology than we even talk about today, right? And so pretty much everything that we talk about today that's like, woo, well, T cells and, genetic engineering and blah, blah, blah. No, that's like old hat, right? So, the big splat. We were in the big splat. It's not coming. It's like, don't look out. This is it. Russia just put out a thing today. Their whole government, not just Putin, but the whole government said, this started out with a special operation. It's now turned into World War III, right? Because their military. I mean, we kind of hooked them into coming in and doing that. And either Putin is reading the script and worked for Mr. Blown just like the other guy is, because every time that guy is trying to represent his people, and because he knows he needs to negotiate, because all that's going to, if this war just keeps going on, more of his people are going to die. Now a lot more people, their soldiers, a lot more Russian soldiers are dying than Ukrainian soldiers, but the overall death count is big on the Ukrainian side. And, a good portion of the people dying are the, non-combatants, right? So, uh, and 7 million Ukrainians have already left the country, mostly mommies and kids. And Poland has taken a ton of them because mommy is like well educated, and she's not, a draw on the country. Actually, she'll be a big plus on the GDP. And the kids are going to be super soldiers. They will have such, first of all, the Polish have embraced them and brought them in and didn't put them in camps. They put them in people's houses, and that's like Uncle Yasha there. And so they're going to have about 1 million or so youngsters growing up, being educated by the Polish system, and most of them will, men and women, will want to go in the Polish military to go attack the Russians. And whether we attack them, with NATO immediately or in 10 years from now, that war is going to happen, right? And I'm betting, not betting, but I would say that it'll happen sooner rather than later. And, don't be like, oh my God. It's like people going on in America about how violent it is. Please. 1972, New York City went bankrupt. And they went from 1 week having 30,000 cops to having 7,000 cops. And those 7,000 cops who stayed there were the criminals, the guys who were on the take, and et cetera, et cetera. And so I lived in a neighborhood where 5 people were murdered a week. A neighborhood, not a town, not a, but 2 blocks this way, 4 blocks that way. And 5 people were murdered a week for 20 years. Now, some would say those people deserve to be murdered, but um, I mean, I didn't get murdered because I was, involved in social activism and art and fun stuff, and so it didn't matter what side you were on. Oh, that's Al. That's okay. He's okay. We like him, right? So, and in 1988, when I came back from Australia, not Australia, from Brazil. So I built this nightclub in Bucios, right? And it was like straight out of Star Wars, And Bucios was like that town where Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke go to get a spaceship, right? And all the scum of the you know universe is hanging out there. Listen to those guys. Boo, doo, 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 doo. That's Buzios, right? And it was run by this woman. They called them Madame, right? And she looked just like Jabba the Hutt. She was like 800 pounds of slimy, sweaty blubber, and she lived in a castle, and all these sycophants around her, and it was like. And I got picked up at the airport by her lawyer. He called me on the phone. Me living in a freaking abandoned building, and I had a phone that was like hijacked somebody else's line, and it rang. And this guy asked for me. I said, "How do you get this line? Are you? Yes, it's me. What do you want?" Well, did you make Xenos? Yes. Well, I didn't make it, but I made it work. Lights and flickers, and yes, I did that. I brought it to life, right? Other people built it, but it wouldn't work. So they brought me in, and I spanked it up, right? And I got paid very well for that one. That was done by Tony Two Toes and Bobby Bentnose, and they were gonna, kind of get whacked if they didn't come across because man, they spent a lot of money. So anyway, that went, that was pretty famous joint, and this guy says we want you to come to this place in Brazil and build us a nightclub like that. The Madame went there and really liked it, and will you come? I said, why should I come? Well, we'll pay you a lot of money. Who knows? I mean, what would it? I don't want to. Well, if you go down to Brazil's airlines, and they had them in Pan Am building, right where the railroad station, Penn Station used to be. Um, they kind of built on top of it. It's still there, and because it was an amazing building back in the day when the railroads were becoming king. In America, instead of building cathedrals, we built gigantic, beautiful um, railroad stations in our major cities, and they were pretty much all called Penn Station. One in New York, there's one in D.C. I don't know what the one in Chicago is called, but anyway, and there's one in L.A. too. That's kind of like that. So anyway, they built a Pan Am building, and so along 34th Street, and there was Park Avenue kind of goes right through Pan Am building and through the railroad station, and underneath it, so it's got a bridge that kind of elevates it, and 34th Street goes underneath it. And all along 34th Street, above Pan Am building, along there is airlines. All the national airlines. KLM and British Airways and French Airways, and yeah, everybody else, Lufthansa, everybody. And so the Brazilians have an office there. So the guy on the phone said, "Go down there, tomorrow. I mean, right now it's a little late. It's Sunday, but go down there tomorrow, and there will be a first class ticket for you and an envelope with $5,000, right? And that envelope is just a sign of our goodwill to you. You can go down there and you can get that $5,000, and you don't have to get on the airplane and come to Brazil. But that's just to show you how much money you will make if you come and do this, right? And we'll, show you a good time. You'll be high class, but you won't worry about anything." So I, you know, had nothing to do, had no gigs, no real girlfriend. I kind of wanted to change my direction of what I was doing at that time. There were a lot of reasons why. I just didn't want to do the same old same, right? Pride says if you do the same thing over and over again, that's a sure sign you're nuts, right? Well, I was not doing quite the same thing, but I was doing kind of the same thing. I mean, New York was always my base. I would go off and do all kinds of crazy stuff all over the place, but I'd always come back because I could, right? And I could always find a great place to live. And I could always, build another nightclub, right? Build another fancy restaurant, build another something, right? So I said, okay. So I went down there, got a ticket. It was like for that afternoon, right? So I kind of already, he said that. He said, go down, get the thing. If you want to go, just go outside, tell the lady, get not a limousine, but a car to drive you to the airport. So I did. I packed up my little bag because I don't really, whenever I travel extremely light, except now on the wire, I'm like a homeless guy. I got all my stuff in my, see the homeless guy around with the shopping cart. Well, I got my car, like my shopping cart. So I got clothes and bed and everything I'd ever need to. You see that right there? There's my here's my sleeping bag with my electric blanket and my comforter and pillow. Right. But I'm at these people's house. They're very nice. They said, "Oh, why don't you stay with us? You got a place for me for Thanksgiving?" I said, "No, stay with us." So I will, and I will leave when the weather will be optimum for me to travel from here north. Right. So you know, this last 2 weeks in the deep green, it's been an amazing Indian, you know, summer in September and October. End of October, beginning of November. Um, yeah, end of the last week of October it was 75 every day and 56 every night. Right? Couldn't ask for better. And I was going, hey, global warming, all right. But it was like a light switch. Around the last Thursday of October, it started to get cold. I woke up in the morning, it was 70. By the afternoon, it was, 50, right? And so, and the evening it was in, late low 40s. And it just got colder and colder. It's still sunny, but colder and colder. And a couple rainy days, we didn't have any snow, which was good. So I got out of there because I knew snow was going to come any second. So I got out of there. And because once it snows there, it's really hard to get out of there, and it's not. I mean, I've been there once when it really where I didn't have a place to go. I kind of camped there. The rest of winters, if I wasn't in Florida or California or another planet, I you know I had people around that neighborhood in West Virginia um, and Kentucky who had farms, but they were not professional farmers. Kind of they were, but I mean, their parents were. They weren't. They had careers, made money, and then took over the family farm. It didn't. I mean, they made money, but they were doing it to for why they liked doing it, right? And but their kids grew up and went to college and were living other places, so they go to Arizona or California or Florida or wherever and they would say, "Hey, can you, stay in our farm and take care of the animals, or do this, or do that?" Sure, nice house, warm, food. Um, don't have to pay any bills. I could close up the deep green and go hang at their place. So one winter, I said, and it wasn't even that bad. It was only about 20 days that were like, woo, cold. Like 18 degrees below freezing. Anyway, this winter looked like it's going to do that. So I'm on the wire. I'm going to wherever I can go, right? And so it seems to be working, right? So, but you know, I picked deep green because it's extraordinarily survivable. No matter what happened, I could survive there. I'm traveling into the belly of the beast. If war goes on, your Al Bob will get. If I hear the siren, I'm not going in anybody's basement. I'm going to go out to where I will be turn to dust, you know, and that'll be fine, because, even though, here, let's see, hold on a second. I'm going to get a picture. Ugh, I'm going to show you something. Ugh. Here's a picture of me in 1996. And my shoulder goes here to here, right? Today, I'm about here to here, and my head is like, see, head's a lot, not as not as thick here, not as jowly, right? So I was 410 pounds in this picture, give or take, right? And when I died in a plate of spaghetti about 91, about 11 years later, um, I, no, I oh, 11, 18, almost 19 years, almost 20 years from that picture, I was pushing 500 pounds, right? And that's why I died in a plate of spaghetti. And so now I'm almost my high school weight. I'm about 198. I've been fluctuating 198, 210. Um, Not going back and forth, but slowly going to 98 and maybe getting back to 200. But that's pretty good, from almost 500. Losing 300 pounds ain't bad, and that's why I'm alive. But and when it wasn't that I just went up to almost 500 and then down. No, I basically, you know in that 20 years went from this guy, you know up to 500 pounds. That was in, well, when was that? 96, maybe somewhere between 94 and 96. That picture was taken, and you know so but my pancreas, my liver, my knees, my ankles, shoulders, wrists all have arthritis, and I have charcoal legs, meaning all those 20 in my feet have turned into mush, and I have neuropathy, which you're either extremely in pain or feel nothing. Nothing better than feeling a lot of pain. The pain is your friend because it gives you the heads up if something's wrong, right? So when they're up there, you don't know that's wrong. I have whacked myself in my legs a couple of times. Where I didn't even bumped into something, but kind of really hurt myself. I didn't notice it, right? Look, for a day or two. But now since I had that, I got a couple of, and I had really bad diabetes. I mean, I've kind of gotten hold of all of these things. I've gotten to what they call homeostasis, right? My body's in a balance, right? And so, and I have certain traditions. I don't eat anything after, um, you know, 7 p.m. And here it is, pushing towards 11. I haven't, you know, I don't eat. I mostly eat vegetables and proteins, right? Not that many carbohydrates. Because man, just one little cookie, will send my blood sugar through the roof, right? Normally, I can keep it around 99, 110, which is pretty good. One little cookie can shoot up to 130. I can get it down again if I don't eat any more of that crap. But see, when you have diabetes and you eat sugar, you crave sugar. The only thing you can do is just cut sugar out, period. And that's everything. Bread and sourdough, not so much. You can live with sourdough, but anyway. Um, so if I go, it's all right. I've already died 7 times. So I, um, I'm here to serve love's co-creation. That's what I'm here to do, right? I'm here to help you. I mean, why do I do this show? I do it to help you. You know, that is my job. That's what I was brought back to do. That's what I'm doing. I enjoy it. I know I can feel you guys out there. A lot of you contact me on the dude awake 42 at Gmail, dude awake 42 at Gmail. A lot of people who, had thought it was like I gotta and they got a hold of me and I started talking to them and they're and I didn't like you know grab them by the scruff of the neck. I didn't I just talked to them, right? And every single one of them, about 100 people in the last 4 years who've gotten a hold of me, it has changed their life. And they're at a place in their life that it's okay. Meaning before, you know, they were like hanging on on the razor's edge, and now it's okay, right? I didn't do that. They did that, right? I was just there to listen. I was just there to give them a pep talk, right? I was there to give them a perspective that they might not have had, right? So, and that's what I do when I do this show. Every time I do it, but every time before I go on air, I prepare myself shamanically, and so I am the pebble in the World Wide Web. My little, you know, wave is going out to people, watching or not watching. It's going into that, and the World Wide Web was invented by a computer scientist out there in the Silicon Valley before it was the Silicon Valley, when it was just DARPA land. And DARPA invented the internet to survive nuclear war. So the military industrial complex could communicate with universities, right? Because that's where most of the people who design stuff, like me, you know, in the 90s, that's what I did. I, when it was, got gigs to do research. And most of those, that research, I didn't, you know, oh, let's do this. No, I would be working on something that, with my little, you know, toolbox, in my shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic, alchemical way of looking at things. And that's everything. And there were a lot of, powerful, smart people who, had bumped into me over the years. You guys, this guy, he's nobody like this guy, and he's really, he doesn't have idealistic bone in his body, right? All he does is he serves, loves co-creation. What's that? It's not a threat to us, but his perspective is pretty. So I would look at things in a way that none of their people looked at things, and yet I was very good working with all their people and getting them to work with each other and not be oh getting the most out of them rather than there's a certain level of competition where it becomes a you know, goes down in its ability to manifest a positive outcome of what you say want to have happen, right? So anyway, so when I went to Buzios, I built that disco, and it changed everything because the average working person there, the fishermen, the people who worked in restaurants, and you know, about 3,500 people who were like they were basically slaves, right? For the infrastructure of this. Basically Nazi event. And so that, it was the same kind of a motif as, concentration camp, but not so, nasty. People could at least eat and have a pretty good time, right? So I went in there and I was building this club. And instead of the average person made $1, a skilled, someone who's really considered worthwhile, made $1 a day, right? So when we were building this thing, um, these guys could actually probably make more money fishing because it's Buzio started out as a fishing village and a farm. They had farm, and when you came up the main drag and came down into this peninsula, the first half of it were these really lush farms, right? And so if they were left alone, weren't being, oppressed by the Nazis and the Madame and the power structure behind them, that I would call the hidden hand, um, they could have made a lot more money. So anyway, when people started working for me, first the builders, like they wanted to build it on this beautiful, 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 beautiful beach, like 10-mile long beach, right? And the reason why this beautiful, beautiful beach was there is that there was a mountain that surrounded it. This mountain went down into this beach. There's like really no way to get there. There were a lot of footpaths that you could go and hang out on the beach, but and it was a big beach, meaning it wasn't as a mountain straight down to the water like in Jamaica, but um, it came down, and there was at least you know that 10-mile long beach probably had you know half a mile um, of land, arable land that went up to the mountain. That even if the hurricane came in, the tidal surge wouldn't take that you know 1 mile, half mile to 3 mile wide strip of 10 miles. So, but there was no road down there, right? And that's why it's so beautiful. Nobody did anything there, right? They built all the stuff on the other side of the peninsula, which was a big, open, beautiful beach that went right there. And the whole town, the tourist town was there, and the hospital was up there. And all the rich people, the Nazis and Madame's castles were up on that side where the mountain was, and the view was out there. And I kept looking down at this beautiful beach, right? So anyway, when it got me, the guy picked me up at the airport, and I didn't go through customs. Meaning, when I was going through customs, these people came and grabbed me and took me into a private room. Now, I thought, I've been around that before, and I thought, oh, that's not very good. But they weren't mean to me. They didn't beat me up or anything. They just put me in a room. And then this guy with a suit came out. Let's go. I said, "What do you mean, let's go? Don't have to get things stamped." He said, "No, no, no. The car's waiting for us." And he had like a Mercedes that was like you could, it was a tank. It was a military vehicle. You could hit it with a, rocket and it's still raw, right? And the guy's uh, chauffeur, right? Top half you'd see in the window, you know, like, white shirt, black tie, black jacket, a little cap, right? But when he got out, he was barefoot and had these tattered, shorts, right? Little guy, right? And he opened up the door. We got in. There was only one door in, right? And a big couch, right? And there was a big, you know, bar, and you could have food. It was everything, right? So we take off, and he pulls out a blunt. He says, "You want one?" I said, "Ooh, this is tasty. Yeah, sure." And we're drinking champagne and whiskey and eating these favelas, these really great little pasty little things. And he's going on and on about, so you're going to have to get used to the social structure there and not get upset by it. Don't take your American liberal ideas. I said, listen, if you've done any homework on me, you kind of realize that I'm a different kind of guy. And yes, he said that's one reason why we picked you, right? Not just your artistic abilities and your organizational skills and your being able to get people to do something. And I said, okay. So he drives in there, and I go meet, and it was just straight out of Star Wars. That scene where it's Jabba the Hutt, and Luke comes, and he goes down into the dungeon. It was just like that, right? And all these people, "Doo, doo, 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 doo," and sycophants laughing at. Anyway, and when we were driving in there, the guy goes, "Don't ever look the madame in the eye, you know, and never ever say anything about her except you look beautiful today," right? And when we got in there, I was like, I, I just, it was like, being shown a snake and I'm a mouse, and it's like looking in my eyes. And that's about how I looked. And I said, once at this one moment, I had the skill of doing this. Everyone, I mean, it was pretty loud and doot, 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 and then all of a sudden, everyone was quiet when I was being introduced to the madame. And I said, "What the fuck? What are you?" And that's like, shouldn't have said that. And everyone's like, "Look, he's going to be thrown down in the thing, and the dragon's going to eat him." And they're all like, totally, sycophant and, Freudenscheide. and they're looking at me like, okay, he's going down in the dungeon, and she just starts to laugh, and the lawyer kind of leans up. You are one lucky guy. I said, okay. And I said, no, you need me more than I need you, and I'm just gonna have to be a little more diplomatic about this. So, anyway, everyone gets introduced, and I've already been up for about 18 hours, so everyone knows I'm going to go to sleep. So I get back in the chauffeur-driven limousine. He takes me over to the neighborhood of where the fishermen are, and he basically, you know, goes to this nice little fishing house, right? Kind of on the thing. There's piers going out into the water and fishing boats on it, and there's this kind of fishing house on that um, pier. But it was a nice little house, and people are moving stuff out. And a lawyer comes in and he starts speaking Portuguese. I hadn't, learned Portuguese yet, and basically, everyone's kind of crying and moving their stuff out. Obviously, they're taking it to the fishing thing, and it's a pretty big family: mommy and daddy, grandma, and about 6 kids. And this one girl, about 20 something, speaks English, right? And she starts speaking to me. So you do blah, blah, blah. I said, what are you talking about? She's moving us out. And this is our house, but Madame owns everything and controls, and we can't. If we make too much noise, we'll be dead. I said, wait, no. And I turned to the lawyer. I said, hey, this ain't right. And he goes, what? He said, what did I say? I said, okay, you go, and I'll work this out. He goes, okay, between you and them. So he goes off, and he goes, I will, I told you where my office was in town. Well, why don't you get settled in, and then to a nice night sleep, and then come and we'll have lunch, and I'll show you what where we want to do it and how we want it done, and blah blah blah. I said, okay. So he drives off, and I tell, okay, oh, the girl. I said, hey, tell everyone to go back in. And so, she's telling everyone, and everyone's like surprised and like coming over and hugging me, and then I go, I said, I'll live there, right? In the fishing house. If they we're gonna live in there, I kind of looked at it. I don't need a whole house. We went in there. It's very nice. Maybe it was, I don't know, 600. It was big, square building. That was like I don't know, 20 by 20, maybe 20 by 30, but it had a deck out onto the pier. That was quite nice, right? It had windows all around, nice breeze. And they had moved, a nice bed down there with a nice mattress. And they cleaned it out because they've been told, so they cleaned whatever it was because they're all going to move in there. And so there was a nice desk, a nice kitchen, and they had obviously they were told a day or so before this because they had built a nice little kitchenette. And they had a propane kind of stove, bottle, big tank over on the side. And they had electricity. I mean, it's pretty deadly, but it was had electricity, and it had a bathroom and a shower, and the drain went down into the water, the toilet. Anyway, and it had, they had no piped water. Everything they had the water coming off the roof going into a cistern, right? So anyway, I said, well, this will work. And the bed had big time netting all around it, and there's this area that was like a little corner of the thing had a rug and a very comfy chair and a little thing and a lamp and it was totally screened in. It was like a screened in room in the big room, and around the bed was screened in. Big. So anyway, and it had a big fan, and it had a fan up in the ceiling with a light on it, and they had another fan that blew like right across. So whatever mosquitoes got in there, they kind of got blown around, right? And you were kind of protected by the screen. So anyway, I went in there, and a girl comes in, and she brings a whole plate of fruit and these favelas that are really yummy, 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 and a nice bottle of cachaça and a nice plum wine. And she said her father makes this stuff. She said, explain this place to me. And she goes, "You're a different guy. I mean, most Anglos who come here just treat us like shit, like we're dogs. And you want to know about us?" I said, "Yes, I want to know about you." Right? So tells me a whole story about the place. And that it had been a fishing village, and after World War II, well, before World War II, the Nazis kind of came in and kind of took over Brazil within certain dynamics, right? And she said that the Americans and the Nazis were good buddies. This is like in the 30s, right? Good buddies, right? And they were setting up banking and industrial things, and the other city. So Rio is a big city, and the other city, I forget the name, it'll pop it in my mind, but it's where the big industry is. And that was totally Nazi, right? That didn't exist until the 30s. This is when the Nazis were like, you know, not doing too good, at least on in the in the 20s up until 32. Um, Germany was a basket case, and then Adolf got power and switched it like a light switch, right? And they were doing the same thing to Brazil, turning it into industrial power because it had a lot of resources, right? So anyway, um, and Brazil really, if you go straight across, Europe is right over there, right? It's not like a lot different, you know. Let's see, who else is that? J plus A. Pop in and say hi. Hi. So, how do you like the story so far? You love it. Okay. So, oh, Allie. Let's see. Miss Allie. I've been trying to call you, Al, for a while. And I know you're busy, and I know you don't have anything, but maybe I'll call you now. We can, you know, have a conversation on nine. Uh, Let me hold on a second. Let me get my phone. So these are what Charco feet look like. You know, they kind of not as pretty as most, but they're still there. They used to be black. You know, like my endocrinologist is really amazed that I didn't have to get my legs chopped off. And these all the 28 little bones that are in here are mush. I mean, they don't know how I walk. I used to have these big metal clamps, from all my feet up my legs up to my hips, and I don't anymore. Right? They don't understand. But see, the Aborigines had feet like this all the time. So when I lived with those guys, I asked them about that, and they kind of showed me what it is. So I kind of had that beforehand. Oh, oh yeah. Well, I'm going to give you a buzz. If you answer, you answer, and we'll take the conversation in another direction. If you don't answer, that's cool. I'll continue the story.
Hello.
Hey there, amazing girl. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, you know me, always good. I'm on the bop, on the wire. I'm going to be out and about on the East Coast for the next,
Yeah.
till March.
Are you in New York now?
No, no. I just I'm in around Virginia,
Oh, okay.
and I'll spend Thanksgiving here, and it was a nice day. This was my first day. I closed everything up, locked it up, and
Mhm.
so I drove about 200 miles, and that was good to see if my car could make it. How it was doing.
Mhm.
So I got to this place, and from here to where I'm going to go up in New York is probably about 300 miles. So about another 80 miles more than what I drove. But
Yeah.
boy, the highways were a mess. I mean,
Really?
oh, mind boggling. I mean, just a parking lot.
For people like for the holiday?
I have no
You think?
idea. I mean,
Hmm.
and it was not just in one place. It was, I went on 81 for about 110 miles or so. And
Oh,
and
okay.
I've been up and down that neck of the road a zillion times. I know everything, right?
Mhm.
And so, and they had these things on the highway, car crash up ahead, doesn't tell you what to
Mhm.
do except it's coming, right? And so,
Mhm.
the first one I got to, and it was just stopped.
Oh god.
And so you know how they have a whole lane of where, on the side of the road, right? Where the cops can pull
Yeah.
you over, or so it was just stopped, not going anywhere. And the next exit was up maybe 3 or 4 miles. So,
Yeah.
and I knew there's this other road called 19 that was the main road before they built the interstate, right?
Mhm.
And so I said, okay, I'm just going to drive 2 miles up there and get on that road. And so I did. And what I did was I just got over into that um, thing where you can pull over, and I just shot like 50 miles. Now, if anyone pulled out in front of me, boy, it would have been hamburger all over the highway, right?
Mhm.
But no one saw me fly by, and there were no cops there. And I came up over a hill, and I was like maybe a half a mile to where this turnoff was, and I saw the blinking police light. So I got back in the line before they could see me, and we
Mhm.
poked along there, and there was just a truck stopped, not blocking anything, and a blinking light, the police light, and for you know 8 miles, it was like a parking lot, and it was just stopped for that. And after the
Oh my
people went
god.
past that, they went on to 70 miles an hour,
Oh my goodness.
and it was like,
Sounds like a bunch of salmon or something.
I
Just.
know, it was like, what is up with this? And
Wow.
and so I didn't get off that thing. I just went up, but it happened again. But this time it was worse because it wasn't just 3 miles; it was 20 miles. So,
Jeez.
so when I saw that thing say 20 miles, 2 miles up ahead, this is, it's going to be, and I got off onto this 19 and took that road, and
Yeah.
it was bizarre because it was just stopped for 20 miles, and no one got. There were about 15 places where people could have gotten off. Now it's not right there. You have to drive. It's like parallel. Most of it's parallel because it goes through little towns and stuff like that. Anyway, so I was on it and got close to where I was, and then people started to get off, and so that 19 became paralyzed.
Mhm.
So I then had to drive even further to like more smaller county roads that I knew about that people weren't on. But it was mind boggling.
Yeah, it sounds like the M25
Right.
in London.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I know that road
Torture.
well. Yes. And why, and I never understood that. Why would it be like that? And there was you'd get past a guy with a flat tire, and everyone had to like slow down to nothing for that for
Yeah.
5 hours. I mean, what's up with that?
All it takes is just one driver to freak out and slow everyone else down.
Right. So but it gets me this, and I'm seeing, this whole thing in Ukraine. It makes no sense to me,
Oh goodness. Tell
you
me
know?
about it. Yeah.
And so that means that anything is up for grabs. Meaning
Yeah.
all the shit that you would say, why would they start nuclear war? Well, they're going to.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
not they're going to, but it can happen
Yeah.
because of all this other crazy shit's going on, and there is no because they're military, strategic, all of those reasons makes no sense for what Putin did, right?
Yeah.
And
Oh, definitely.
all the other stuff that's going on around it is there is no sense. It's like there is something else going on that we can't quite see that's motivating all this. Because to me, it looks like both Putin and what's really interesting, both the presidents, Putin and the Ukrainian guy, they're both named Vladimir.
Yeah.
So it's like the war of the Vladimirs. So what's your psychic sense of all of this? I mean, how's it affecting you? Are you still just writing and with having a bubble around you from the rest of the world? What's going on with you?
Yeah, I am definitely a bubble girl. Definitely. I tried to put something on while I was working, and I just was like, I just couldn't even try a new movie or anything just because it's all just so the same. It's just all the same. It's kind of like that driving thing, it's there's like a formula that people stick to, and I'm the complete opposite. So,
So
but
did you get your two projects in?
nope, I'm working on it now.
When's the deadline?
29th.
29th. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. I
So
got some time, but I'm planning on turning in 3 now, so
how'd
because
you
why
do
not?
how'd you do with the two?
Well, I haven't started the second one yet. I'm finishing the first one now, but
Which
the second one, I have a clear idea of what I'm going to do. Like the first one was just more of like an experiment, like I'm trying different art styles.
hmm
So,
so was
and then
the
the second one is gonna
so
go
we
back
were
to
talking
art.
about the bad girl one and the Viking one, right?
Yes.
So did you how did you do with those?
Almost done with the Batgirl one, and then the Viking one was next.
Have you written
But
any of the Viking one yet?
yes,
Okay.
yes, and I'm putting together the plot more, like adding more plot and
hmm
background for the characters, and how I'm gonna start the first scenes, and like every single day, I really feel like I've um, grown so much. So every day my art is better, my storytelling.
Well,
So
that's good because it really. I told you the story about Stephen King, right? He wrote this
yeah.
stuff for 20 years, had like 60 novels that he sent. They all got rejected until
Mhm.
he did the Firestarter one, and
Mhm.
that they said, yeah, this is pretty good. We're just going to do paperback. We're not doing hard copy. And it sold a
Mhm.
million, right? And I said, oh wow, you got any more of these stories? And then he just started pulling them out. And that's people. He's so prolific. Well, he wrote 20 years before anything got, you know.
Yeah.
So and like
And it's the power of taking away the distractions as
yes.
well.
Well, he lived in Maine. He had no, it snowed all the, all he did was have kids, teach high school, and write novels, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So that's and they didn't go on vacations. They didn't have a lot of stuff. They just lived in Maine.
Mhm.
And
Mhm. Yeah,
so that's kind
exactly.
of you. You're there. So how's your fam doing?
Good.
Good. And you are
Okay.
expanding your appreciation and understanding. So when you move on, it'll be like I did that. I now got it straight. I have no angst
Oh,
about.
so much.
Yes. Good.
So much. Like I said, every day, like I feel like I'm just really, really, really growing.
Good girl.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, that's good. Okay.
That's
So
partially why I've been so busy is
oh
that
yeah,
I've
I mean
just
I
been
knew that.
in my bubble.
And so when I call you, you see that I call, right?
Um,
Does
Maybe
it,
about 20% of the time,
like,
because
no,
my phone
not
goes
so much that
silent.
you notice it, but it leaves a little message. This guy
Oh,
called.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I don't even leave a green dot anymore because when I'm out in the woods, I can actually. I don't understand this, but I can actually make the phone call, right? And it rings and rings, and then
Mhm.
it says, can't leave a
Mhm.
message. And so, I mean, I basically hang up after the third ring, right?
Mhm.
Because you usually, if you're going to pick up, you pick up like pretty much right away.
Mhm.
And so I know so that's what I thought. But when I try and do a blue dot, it doesn't always do it when I'm out in the woods. I have to go, if I'm in town where, there's towers
Oh,
and
I see.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yes. So I can do it then, but if I'm not out, but now I'm out and about. I'm like in the big world of telecommunications.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I only have a week left of this intensive
Folk
stuff, and then
being bubble girl.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm always gonna be bubble girl, but yeah.
Well, that's good.
How have you been?
Oh, well, since we last talked, pretty much I've just been getting things together to go.
Mhm.
I got rid of my school bus, and the guy who bought it was a real jerk. I mean, it took 5 months for. I'll buy it. No, I won't. I'll buy it. No, I won't. Let me
Mm.
clean it up. And other distractions of that nature. There's like all the rich people are kind of moving in, but because it's now inflation time, um,
Mhm.
which is such a joke because if you understand how the first time I took statistics, the teacher professor says, "Okay, kids, I'm going to teach you how to lie with numbers." And I took a lot of statistics, a lot of economics, but never got a degree. I just studied with really good professors who would teach me something. I didn't care about the degree. I just wanted to learn what this stupid
Yeah.
shit was. And they're all different measurements of what our economic growth is, right?
Mhm.
And it's not just the GDP. There's hundreds of them. There are all these different entities that measure this. The farm guys and the steel guys and the railroad guys and these guys. And unless you put them all together, you can't really see the big picture. And that's what the
Yeah.
Federal Reserve is supposed to do, but they don't, right? And so this inflation thing is a joke because it's our government has been living on a credit card for the last 150 years, like since the
Mhm.
Civil War. And
Mhm.
every so often they have to like jigger what's going on so it doesn't collapse. And every time
Mhm.
we have a swing, it's that. And sometimes it gets pretty bad, the Great Depression or '08. But pretty much every single one, the collapse in '86, we used to have close to 40,000 banks. Now we only have six,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
um, the dot-com bubble, there used to be about 150 cutting edge technological um, computer companies, software, this, that, and the other
Mm.
thing. They're now four. And that's what the
Mhm.
dot-com bubble did. Right? And so, anyway,
Yeah.
it's so the whole thing about inflation is just forget about it. So, and what's really interesting, where I live in Tennessee, gas it got down to 286.
What?
Yeah, exactly. What's gasoline going for in your neighborhood?
Maybe around four,
Yeah.
4 to 5.
So and I live in an extraordinarily weird rural area. There are no pipelines,
Mhm.
right? So and there are not that many people. So why is gas, within, Adam Smith, economics? We should have the most expensive, but why 286? So I definitely filled
Yeah.
up before I left.
Well, because of profit, really, they're not gonna make very much profit anyway,
That's what I'm
so
saying.
people don't have very much money
Right.
to
So
buy
why?
it.
But it
Yeah.
should be up through the roof because they don't care
Yeah.
about
When I
poor
went to
people.
LA, it was, like, around $10 a gallon.
Yeah. I mean, so anyway, that's what I'm talking. None of this makes common sense, right?
Nope, nope,
Nope,
nope, nope,
no,
nope,
no,
nope.
no. So nuking the world, people, why would they do that? Well, because somebody wants to do it, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I
And I
mean,
don't
that's
think
kind of like the old times still trying to be current, you know?
right, and they can't.
Exactly. They're out of style
And
now.
it's so obvious that is, you look at Biden, you look at Putin, you look at what's her name, Madam Leposky, or that other, Moscow Mitch, uh, you can't even, I remember he said something when they were trying to get single payer, like, government health care for everybody, like pretty much every industrial nation. So the miracle girl here, she came from England, right? So they had basically free healthcare in England, right?
Mhm.
And pretty much somewhat of a good safety net for the public.
Yeah.
I mean,
Better than here for
yeah,
sure.
yes, exactly. Now you think we live in the richest country in the frigging world, you'd think
Uh-huh.
we'd have a little better system, but no.
Yeah.
So,
I thought Norway was the richest country in the world.
well, maybe per capita, but see, again, you can lie with numbers.
Yeah.
Per capita, you'd say yes, but because we're so little, we're so big and we have so many resources, so much that it really are no one can compete with our GDP.
Yeah.
But the comfort of the people, the feeling of well-being, that kind of thing. Yes, Norway, Sweden, those countries, but it's their neuroses is stranger. So you were over there.
Oh, hell yeah.
So what was your take on the Denmark, the Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland? Those guys have the best
Mhm.
social everything for their people. What was your
Yeah,
you
well,
must have had a good deal of interaction with those folk. What was your take on that?
um, I think there's just like a lot of old money there as well. So you have like a lot of these systems that, like 'cause they've been around since the Vikings.
Right.
So they've had like systems going on for a lot longer than people realize. And have you seen the series Ragnarok?
I've seen it once, but I really haven't watched it. I have no media. I have no TV, no
Hmm.
satellite, no telephone, no nothing up there in the deep green. So yeah, I saw it once, just kind of flashed. What's that? And then I never saw it again. What? Give a little fill
Well,
on that,
it's a Norwegian series,
right?
and it's of course it's pretty weird as Scandinavian
Yeah,
shows
yeah,
are,
yeah.
but it has some really good points to it, and you could see how like people from Norway were also just spreading awareness about how they too have to deal with corporations and how the corporations run everything,
Mm-hmm.
and like a lot of the people are suffering because of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the fish thing, like they keep going through the stream even though like they know that they're getting ripped off, but they just don't care, because they're alive and they go home and they have
Right.
food on the table. And so I think it's like you said, it's a good system, but there's a lot of stuff that's like going on that
Well,
people can't even see
as
it.
I forgot which guy said it, but power corrupts, and ultimate power corrupts ultimately. You know,
Hmm.
so as soon as you get a system that controls pretty much everything, even though it was set up to do the best for everybody, you know,
Hmm.
people get control of it, and they think they're God, and
Oh yeah.
I think what's his name, Elon Musk was brought on the picture. None of those guys made any of this shit themselves. They were just placed there. Mr. Facebook, and Mr. Apple, and all those people. Their whole story. You look at them; it's very interesting. Yeah, their parents weren't super rich, but they were in the mix. and they
Mhm.
were, and all of those kids went to private schools that
Mhm.
made them that way.
Mhm.
You know, he says, "Oh, I came to America with $1,200," and no, when you really look at it, no, right? Like
Mhm.
Mr. Bill Gates, he came from a well-to-do, like a family I had, which was, they weren't rich. They were, what would you call them? Upper middle class.
Mhm.
They had a lot of cash, but and stuff, but they weren't rich. And I got sent off to a school like above the kind of school these guys went to because I was supposed to be like a rocket scientist for the Pope. I was supposed to be something.
Mhm.
And every time they'd roll me into something that, oh look, he's got he can do this. Okay, I would say, oh, I'm real in for you teaching me how to do this shit, but I'm not going to do it the way you want me to do it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be your little toy. I'm just going to, you know. And they kept doing it because I could still do kind of what they wanted me to do, but even though I did it on my own terms, that was fine for them, you know. Because
Mhm.
that's what a number of different people told me this who were like using me. You know, we love you, Al, but if there were more of you, we'd have to kill you.
Yeah.
Since I was the only one, and I was still doing shit for them that they wanted me to do, but just my own way. And it might make the people who thought they were in power get upset, but they were just middle managers. And,
Mhm.
and they would, until, they didn't need me anymore. And bingo, I was out in the woods, which is that's why I bought that place. I knew this was going to happen. I found the most comfortable place. But now the rich people are coming there and trying to turn it into the next Las Vegas. And they can't because the energy of that place is so spiritually high, it just chews them up.
Mhm.
So it's quite interesting to watch. So my whole little take of my observation is it's all okay, you know?
Yeah, it is.
It's
It really is, and
it-
it's actually getting better every day.
yes, that's the other thing that the media, and that's why when they go, oh, the nuclear war is coming, they're just trying to scare the shit out of people. And yes,
Yeah.
they may nuke a couple of places just to show, oh, isn't that? I mean, that
They're trying to throw the Kindle in the
right,
fire or
right,
whatever.
right, because you'd think looking at Syria or Yemen or Iraq or Afghanistan or any of the things that we've
Yeah,
done,
exactly. There's so many psychopaths. You think
right,
that something would have happened by
right,
now.
right, and that those things should have been scary enough for everyone to bend over, but not really. and
Yep,
and the different
exactly.
groups, how they're trying to set everyone, like where I live, it's how Hillary Clinton said that they were a basket of deplorables, and then what's his name, Obama said all they want is their guns and their religion. I mean, man, if that wasn't patronizing and sexist and and racist, and here's a black guy who should have way known better to say something like that. And
Mhm. Mhm.
anyway, they're not that way because not
No,
everyone is anyway. You can't just
exactly.
uh, pigeonhole anybody. They're all different, and
We're all the same.
they're mostly nice.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're nice to them, they'll be nice to you.
And people are just getting tired. They're just getting tired. I feel like they just don't even have the energy anymore to to start something.
Yes, yes. But it's just amazing how people can be really twisted up. So there are like a bunch of these rich people. So I have nothing. I mean, really, really have nothing. But I have everything,
Mhm.
right?
Exactly.
So when
Yeah.
I have nothing, I mean, the average person, we go, how could you even imagine to crawl out of your little hole with only $200 in your pocket?
Mhm.
What if something goes wrong? Well, I'll deal with it.
Mhm.
So that's I don't even think about that. I mean, I don't even because if I thought about it, it would stop me from doing whatever I want. That what the universe wants me to do. So I know the
Yeah,
universe has got my
exactly.
back, so I'm not going to worry about it. So.
And like you said, it's all good anyways. So
Right,
why try and put a spanner?
right, exactly.
Yeah.
But we are so primed to do that. That is really the only manipulating mechanism they got.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
they
true.
can't control us. We can only self control ourselves to do what they want us to do. So,
Yeah, exactly.
so that's why the media and et cetera is is what it is. So, what has been your other than the realization that things are getting better and better, and each day you've got you realize how you're growing. Um, what are give the audience a little experience of these epiphanies you're having.
Well, the world is just a reflection and a reaction from us, and we really are in control. And it's very simple. People think that the solution is, or things are difficult. We have to strive, but it's so innate. It's like beyond easy. It's innate. We don't even have to try.
Right, go with the flow.
Yeah, yeah.
So, tell us, if you wish, some of so you tell us about the piece that you're most excited about and most complete.
I don't know if I'm most excited about all of them,
Oh,
but
good.
I'm almost done with the mean
Mean
one or the
Girl, right?
bad.
Right.
Yeah,
And so you're doing the artwork for that too.
yeah, yeah. And it's so detailed that that's why it's also taking so long. Is that it's just very detailed, which is
Okay,
good,
right.
because I'm really like it's different. It's very different from most stories,
Well,
like
that's
the
good.
art style and everything.
And
So
the client who will receive this will appreciate that more than something thrown together.
I think so. I think so definitely because it's all like a learning experience, and
Yep.
we never really lose anything.
Right.
So even though like sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish I could do this and do that, it's also about letting that go and trusting that where I'm going is actually better.
Hmm.
So, and even though like maybe I want to hand them all in and show them all off, I just have to have faith that I need to just do my best and do what I can,
Yep. Yep.
and
Do your
and
best.
love it.
Yep. Yep. Do
Yeah,
your best.
and I do love it.
Right.
Like
Right.
I'm very very happy.
Good.
So yeah.
So, in the last 3 years that I've been out there in the deep green, I tell people, oh, I've written 15 novels, right?
Mhm,
Well, I have, but the ones that are most finished are the ones I sent you, right? 4 or 5,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
And even those aren't finished. And they're a
No.
series because I started out writing one novel and I said, well, this is too long, too complicated. And so I broke it up into 5 novels and now they're short.
Mm,
The longest
mhm,
one is maybe 300 pages, but shortest one is about 110.
mm,
So, but they're a series, so they kind of connect to the next one, the next one, the next one.
mhm.
So I know you don't
And the
have time
options are endless.
to look at my stuff, and the stuff I sent you, which I probably sent at least a month or two ago. All of them have been greatly changed because, and this is really the thing I'm getting to. So I have 5 that were one, and I broke them up just the way they kind of were coming out. I said this really is a
Mhm,
separate thing, and this is a separate thing, and there'll be a series. But
mhm,
I wrote them because I wrote them as one thing, and as I rewrote them, I was rewriting them all at the same time. Meaning, I didn't just work on one. I would work on one, get 20 pages rewritten, and get tired with it, and go over to the next one, and then the next one over here, and
mhm,
then bounce over to this one, and bounce over that one, because I'd be writing something. Because since they're a series, I'd write something for this one. Go, oh, that'll work better over here. So, do you get
mhm.
that since you're working on a number of pieces? Do you see how they, within the construct of your creativity, are connected, and that they kind of um, manifest or create an inertia for your writing?
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. Everywhere. I see them now in everything. And I have to, that's another reason why I am limiting my distractions, is because it's just sometimes that manifestation is out of control. Not in a bad way, but it's instant. It's instant. It's incredible. It's just like all of a sudden I'll see the exact same thing on the television at the gym an hour later, or it's just like I'll hear it on the radio and I'm like, I need to take off all of these things
Right.
because it's just everywhere now. But it's also about like accepting that and allowing that, because we're all one, you
Yep.
know. So it's actually a beautiful thing, you know. Instead of being upset, like, what? Oh my God, someone's doing my idea,
Right.
or
Right.
or whatever. It's more like, that's awesome. I'm so happy that that
Yes,
is happening.
exactly. My first wife used to get really upset with me because I would work on something and put it in a show or put it in a club or give it to somebody and say, well,
Yeah.
you should be making money at that. That's a brilliant, and especially when I would invent kind of lighting effects and then people would start showing up in movies and all over the
Mhm.
place and she'd like freak out. We could, and I
Mhm.
more or less was kind of happy because one thing I
Yeah.
knew that if I'm having this idea, about 40 other people are having it at the same time,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so and by me doing it just helps that other guy really make it happen
Mhm.
because
Exactly.
my characteristic, my personality, to be, somebody like the lady who did the Harry Potter thing, right?
Mhm.
So she did that, and
Mhm.
I could read her books in a way, realizing that she was like on fire, right? And this was
Mhm.
something that was, but she wasn't the only one having this, you know.
Mhm.
Other
Exactly.
people write. I mean, there's a whole, and and there's tons of people who came way before her, and
Mhm.
she went from being on welfare in England, writing in a coffee shop, to being a billionaire, right?
Mhm.
By putting all her energy in that. Yeah, it's good that she's a billionaire. It's good that she did this, that she got that out into the gestalt of the everybody. But
Mhm.
it also did a thing that kind of restricted her in that that's all she can do.
Yeah. Because it puts her at such a high level, anything else that she does
Right,
is going to be judged or
right.
compared to that.
Yep, yep, yep. And she can't get out of that box. So I spent most of my life, I would get really good at certain things. Like I got really good at being a shrink, and I worked, and I didn't. I got a degree because man, I spent a lot of time in universities, but I wasn't matriculating. You know, I'd be
Mhm.
working on and research this and running a program of that, and I got involved in this one project where I really did need a degree because I was representing this big entity and going into conferences, and all someone would have to say is, so, where'd you go to school? How can you be doing
Yeah.
this, right? And so this guy actually, because he was in a position where he just opened up a drawer, turned out a thing, filled it out, and said, here's your master's in social work. Now, I had studied that. I'd been in lots of different universities, studied with lots of great professors, and I probably had
Mhm.
more hours in than whatever it took to matriculate, right? And he knew that.
Mhm.
He knew that when all I had to do is show this piece of paper to somebody, and then if they asked me a question, I could answer it. Meaning, I
Yeah.
represented that document, right? I could,
Mhm.
right? So anyway, uh, but I never let myself kind of get locked into that. Like I was at a young age, I was pretty successful as a photojournalist,
Mhm.
and that could have been my career, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Mhm.
I shot this lynching in North Carolina in Green,
Oh yeah.
right? That one I told you
Mhm.
about, and that got a lot of cred. I mean, it got put on the wire, but no one in America published it. Period. And
Oh yeah, I know.
the guys in Russia and over, who didn't like us and said, "See what they do." and I got a lot of cred for that. That's how I got into Magnum, meaning, and that was a great thing because they were a union, and I didn't wasn't when I worked for a newspaper, I had to go out on an assignment. It was like having a real job, you know.
Mhm.
Magnum would send me, say, "We need pictures, kinda of this. Go do it your way." I'd go shoot
Mhm.
stuff here, there, and everywhere, and send it to them, and they would it would either sell or not sell. But when I was pretty successful at it, I was making 2 or 3 grand a month, and in 1970, whatever that was pretty good. And that wasn't the only thing I was doing. That was just
Yeah.
so. And it's only only recently sitting out in the woods, I was thinking, I spent my whole life not getting stuck in anything, and I did get stuck in something. Getting stuck is not getting stuck.
Yeah.
So there's no way out of that. The best thing you can do is just really be true to yourself.
Yeah.
So if you do that, and you'll be doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. So
Yeah. Exactly. And I'm there for sure. I've had some cool experiences recently.
good. Just
Yeah.
think how different you are. Not so much that you're different, but you're realizing yourself. Because when I
Mhm.
first we got together, I realized who you were, but you sure didn't.
Oh hell no. Yeah, I had no idea. I had so much going on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And as well, it's also like letting go, and which is hard. Like I literally let go of
You
everything.
did. Yeah.
Everything.
Right. So by doing
Yeah.
that, and I would call that radically letting go. And that's why
Mhm.
I call you the amazing girl, because I'm pretty good at going with the flow, but I really have to, and it's part of my thought process, and that's why I do it. Um, to let go, I really have to, I'm a real analyzing guy. That's what I do.
Mhm.
I mean, you are more organic. I am really an analyzing guy. And the other thing, Aquarian, I'm a real fixed sign, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I'm like the dog with the bone, you know.
Yeah. I'm more of like an observer. Like I'm a bit of everything, you know. So like if I'll observe on it, but I will say like I have that Virgo side to me where I'm like, well, if it's right, then it's right, and
Right,
nothing's gonna push me off. And then
right.
the universe literally has to
Hit
put
you with a
their
two
arm
by
around my
four.
has to drop kick me away. Yeah. And I'm
Well,
still in the air, like grabbing at the air to
yeah,
but
when you do that, you're like Wile E. Coyote going after the Roadrunner.
yeah.
He's like, oh wow, I'll just strap myself to this rocket and I'll be as fast as he is. Right? No, bad idea.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
but you really have embraced um, that letting go, which is not a Virgo thing. That's not a Virgo
Yeah.
thing. You know, Virgos.
The thing that's always saved me is that I've always been a lover, you know, like, and so like I'm like, okay, universe, I love you, I trust you, and I know you love me, so fine, I'll see what you're trying to show me or tell me, or you know.
But again, that's in a very evolved Virgo trait because
Oh hell yeah, I
yes,
know that.
yes, Virgos don't do that.
Yeah, but I was like that when I was a kid, and then I kind of de-evolved growing
Yes,
up,
and
and then
that's one of the weirdness of humans. We all think we're so hot shit. I mean, if you really studied
yes.
the history of humanity, and it's only the humanity that we know of the last 60,000 years, and there
Mhm.
is real scientific evidence that Homo sapiens sapiens have been here at least a million years.
Mhm.
And but you go to any university, any anthropologist, any guys who got a degree on any academic, they'll tell you, "Oh, you're crazy. You don't, you know." And
Yeah.
I never really. Um, that's why I didn't become an academic. I didn't want to do that. You know, I'm a
Yeah,
scholar.
same.
You
I've always loved learning from life,
know? Right.
you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or a good
And other
teacher.
people. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
I'm really my thing I loved the most, and that I experienced from birth to about 40. I had these amazing teachers, and I had what Plato described as a platonic relationship.
Yeah.
When you love your teacher so much, I mean, it's like more than your girlfriend or boyfriend, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's a deeper, more intrinsic kind of
Love.
thing.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like so many. I was actually listening to Abraham Hicks today, and she kind of. I can hear her so much more clearly now. But like, she was trying to tell this person, like, people just don't understand that they don't really know what real love is. They say, "Oh, I love you, I love this, I love," but no,
Right.
you don't. You. That's not what love is. You know. So yeah. And so, like, it's not a lot of the times that platonic love is stronger than a relationship because relationships are so conditional. You know, people are like, "Yeah, but I love you," but
Right.
that's not love. That's control.
Right. That's control.
You
Right.
know? Yeah.
And I think that is the major conflict that humanity has at this time
Oh my goodness.
is that this is, and our biggest problem is we are, because we have two brains,
Hypocritical.
our brain is split, so we're constantly in a duality state, right?
Mhm.
And each
Mhm.
of our eyes, this nun broke my left eye, but what it
Mhm.
did was humans, like horses, we have blinders on. We don't
Mhm.
see the whole picture, right? And
Mhm.
so when that nun broke that, my left eye doesn't have a blinder anymore. So
Mhm.
I get this,
Amazing.
right, and it really enhances the separation
Mhm.
that we are in to the point that I really see it. So
Yeah.
I try to coalesce, get back into unity, and unity. The only true unity there is unconditional love
Mhm.
and unconditional forgiveness.
Mhm.
Now, you don't have to like fuck yourself over it, but yeah,
Exactly. It's innate.
right,
That's why people think they have to learn it or
right,
or force it or find it. And it's so funny because there's a beautiful poem that I love, and I cannot. I think it's Hafiz, but it's like part of the poem is like on an ancient burial ground there lies um, a scroll or something like that that's dormant within us, and it's like so beautiful. I totally butchered that, but it's like it's basically saying how like there's something inside of us that's
right.
asleep and it's ancient and incredible, and it's inside of us because it's a part of us. It's what we truly are, and it's dormant, and it's kind of like, and I feel like normally you won't just wake up. Slowly it starts to wake up and open its eyes and
But
kind
once
of
the fire gets
get
going,
consciousness.
it's
Mhm.
it's and it's that break even point, and it's that when you can accept unconditional love and unconditional forgiveness,
Exactly. It's about accepting it.
right,
And I can feel myself sometimes. I know it's there, and it's like waiting for me to accept it. And it's funny because it's like we make excuses. It's like, oh well, I need to do this. I
right,
need to do this. It's like, no, you're stalling because you know you're not ready. You
right.
know you have to let this go, or like it's like there's something so wise within us that's actually leading, and we pretend like we're the ones leading.
Yep.
Like it's so funny because I can feel it sometimes, and I can feel myself like working. It's like it's me, it's like an inner truer part of me, but yet I'm like going, no, 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 I'm in control, I got this. But it's like, no, you're just making excuses because not only it's not about not being ready, but it's also like I think there's a part of us that's not willing to yet accept that we want this. what's happening this very second, the problems and the chaos and the gluttony and things like that. Like we actually want that, and it's terrifies people to even think to accept that as part of us.
And not
And
only that,
yeah,
the first step of that is unconditionally loving yourself and
hmm
unconditionally forgiving yourself.
yeah, exactly.
And people who are stuck into religion, right? They
hmm
It's all about the big sin. There is no a mortal sin or original sin or any of that. Because when you look at what Adam and Eve did, if that actually was there, but just taking it as a metaphor, looking at it,
Yeah,
they were the brave ones because
hmm
they knew
exactly.
God plan was that it
They
is
would do that.
right, and that it's a work in progress. And God, if God made everything, that meant He made the
Exactly.
devil. And the devil was his number one lover boy. And
hmm
and so,
Yeah,
it's all basically um, what it's about is that you're supposed to forgive yourself, understand yourself, decide what you're going to do with yourself, and move forward.
yeah, exactly. And not carry that guilt
Right.
and that the judgment.
And that's why John Boy, um, he is, I keep calling the canary in the coal mine, and he is that person who's suffering for all of humanity,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
because, physically, you don't have to worry about paying the bills. He, smart guy. He's talented. He's really a sweet guy, but he just has to can't help himself but to punish himself. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I
the
showed
guilt.
that picture of myself earlier on. Are you watching it on the internet as we talk?
No, I'm not at the moment.
Okay, I showed a picture of myself in '92 or three, or somewhere between '91 and '93, where I weighed 400 pounds.
Oh,
Right.
I saw that photo. I remember you were at
Right.
a party, weren't you, or something?
Well, no, the one I just showed today. Well, it could have been. Actually, I was at a restaurant, but
Okay. I remember you were holding a drink or something, and it was like a.
well, that
I
was a
remember.
different one, and I was even heavier in that one.
yeah,
So, but I'm a third of what I was then, right? And I was telling someone, I showed them that picture, and they said because they're only 40, right? When I was 40, I
hmm
mean, I was like a movie star. I was really, I was being Mr. Electrician, carrying 70 pounds around New York City every day. I didn't
hmm
have a truck or a car. I walked, right? Because I was a New Yorker. And, that kept me in amazing shape. Walk 100 blocks carrying 70 pounds of tools. It's like, yeah, you're going to be, and go up, stairs. Anyway, this guy was complaining about how, everything hurts and this and that. I said, well, you smoke cigarettes, you drink, you do, Bob, your diet is shit. That's why you feel. But if you stop that, every 7 years, every cell in your body is a new cell,
Yeah.
right? Now, if
And
you,
our body listens to us,
right,
Our body listens to us.
yep,
It's like,
yep,
oh, we are? Okay.
yep, exactly. And my doctors, they can only go by being doctoring, but I mean, they're the best doctors I could find, so they actually do a pretty good job of taking care of me. I really, you know, 20 years of serious abuse of your body.
Yeah.
um, and yes, so, well, I started, I died in 2014, I guess. So that's almost
hmm
10 years, give or take, I guess 9 years, 8 years. So 7 years, every cell in my body's new. Well, it copied all those damaged cells, right?
hmm
But when I came back, I said, okay, I'm going back to being Mr. Aesthetic. And I changed my diet, changed everything. And even though, and that's what they said, oh, your organs are already fucked. We have to do this, that, and put you on these drugs for the rest of your life and cut your legs off and give you a triple bypass and you'll never be alive unless you
Yeah.
let us do all this shit. And I said, no, no. I want to be dead because I was dead and I was up there and I was about to have a good time, but they sent me back to do my 11%. And I know that I can get that 11% done in like a snap of a finger.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
whatever.
sorry, that was my spirit guide being like, "Nope." Kidding.
Exactly. So,
Wait.
yeah. So I said, it's all good. This is what I have to do to, take care of that 11%. So, yes. So it's been more than 7 years since I died. However many years it is, 8 or 9. But since I was so focused on my, you know, spiritual, shamanic, energetic, physical path
Healing.
of healing, that it healed me. Yes.
Exactly.
I mean, people.
You were healing, so you were healed.
Right, right, exactly. And I'm still
Yeah.
healing, and so I'm
Mhm.
still alive, right? Because my
Yeah.
legs, I'm at this house, and this mother and daughter both broke their feet at the same time, not same minute, but within days of each other, right? And kind of doing the same thing, walking in an area um, without being conscious, just going from, I got to
Mhm.
get from here to there. They
Mhm.
wouldn't think about anything. And so instead of looking where they're going, they kind of tripped or stepped the wrong way and snapped. Your feet are very strange devices. There are all these little bones in there that are real sensitive.
Very strange.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things in our bodies that don't make any sense. They shouldn't really work, but they're a miracle, so that's why they work. Right? So you got these 28 little bones in your feet. So when you get diabetes, you get neuropathy, you get this thing called Charcot legs that even most doctors, when I got Charcot, what's that? They got to look it up on the computer. Here's a guy who's supposed to be a foot doctor. He doesn't know what that is, and it's pretty much everyone has diabetes who gets it, Anyway, what it does, it turns those 28 little bones in your feet to mush.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you are, let's say, a Aborigines in Australia or a Aborigines in Africa, that's out in the bush, not city dweller, but out in the bush, and really out in the bush, not just doing a farm job or whatever, but really out in the bush. They don't wear shoes, and if you don't wear shoes, you without getting diabetes, you get the same kind of Charcot effect on your. It turns them into mush. Now they walk around. So when I was 27, I lived with a
Oh,
tribe of Aborigines in Australia. They all had this.
yeah.
Their feet look like, frying pans, right?
Yeah, that's the same with the women in my family. I remember being a kid and seeing our feet because we have the feet of like the native
Aborigines,
in our
right?
blood.
Right.
Yeah, and I remember looking at our feet like, and I could just see between the cracks, of like, wow, like we've done a lot of work. We've done a
Exactly.
lot of work.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't just mean like working, I mean like loving and helping
Right,
and
right.
cooking
Before the
and
white
yeah.
man showed up, they
Oh heck
right,
yeah.
oh yeah. And that's because the first peoples were in balance with their environment. They
Yeah. And
weren't
they're
trying
like
to make a
nature's
profit.
shoes.
Right, right. They didn't have shoes.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need them
Right.
because we have more nerves in our feet than anywhere else in our
Oh
body.
yeah, man. I mean, that's what I would studied osteopathy, and
Mm,
it's all in your feet.
yeah. And what's that called when they do the
Yeah,
reflexology?
reflexology. Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah.
I'm good at that. The other real interesting thing is that most doctors only know that you have a cardiovascular system, but
Yeah.
our body is 98% water. We have 9 other uh, you know liquid pressure uh,
Mm.
processes in our gut, in
Oh
the
yeah.
fascia, between your skin and your
And your
bone.
muscle.
All of that
Oh.
gooey stuff is a fluid system.
Mhm.
Meaning, if that wasn't there, your bones, your joints could never work.
Mhm.
And so there's nine of them, and there's a process called cranial sacral where you balance all of those systems together, and that's
Mhm.
part of osteopathy is part of that.
Hmm.
And you muscle test. You ever hear about muscle testing?
Oh yeah, I've done it before.
Yeah, that's what chiropractors use it. And
Yeah.
osteopathy, in that osteopathy was this kind of smorgasbord of medicine between the Civil War, well before the Civil War, about 1840 to about 1940, that 100 years, and they mixed it modern medicine. Real osteopaths used they were a doctor of osteopathy and a medical doctor, and so they would do it all, and they had the best results. And in the 50s, the AMA got bad mouth them, and like pushed them out of the way because they were so much better than a regular doctor.
Yeah. I've been to one before and it was like a magical
Yeah,
experience.
magical
And I went with
experience.
my grandparents, and my grandpa, especially then, was like the most realistic kind of person. Like he did not believe in that, and his ever since then he's just changed from
Mm,
it. Like it's just totally opened his eyes.
yep. And yeah, I love that people. Well, I only believe in reality, and you're in another world, man. You're okay.
Yeah.
So I had a practice in New York, and it was
Oh,
extremely
when you were a shrink?
well. I kind of balled them all up because I learned all this stuff when my draft board finally during the Vietnam War days. My draft board caught up with me, and I never did anything wrong. I just was never around in one
Yeah.
place long enough for that notification to catch up with me.
Yeah.
And when it finally did, I went down there and they said, we've been trying to find you for the last 3 years, and so we don't think we can trust you with a gun because they would almost catch where I was and I'd be gone by the time they showed up, right? And
Mhm.
um, so they had a idea of all the things I had been doing in those 3 years, and it was nothing that like I broke any laws, but it was just so out of the norm that they realized this guy can't. No, he won't be good for the military. So they said, "So you want to
Mhm.
do alternative service?" And I said, "Yeah, sign me up." So I went to the VA. That was my first. I went to Vista. I went down south and I started teaching, and they said, "No, no, no, no. We can't have this guy. He's trying to teach these kids how to think and how to decide for themselves. No, 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 no. We can't have that." So they sent me back to the head office, and they said, "Okay, we're going to send you to a VA." So I did. I was a bedpan guy, and the guy who is Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn, and this guy was amazing guy, Colonel. He was like Sherman Potter in MASH. If you ever watched MASH, he'd been in the
Mhm.
Second World War and the Korean War, and now they dragged him out of retirement. He was like in his 80s. He was a surgeon, and he said he walked in. He said, "I've been watching you, Al." I said, "I never had a conversation." He's a colonel. He runs the whole place. Been watching me, and he goes, "Yeah, you do something that no one here does, and that is you listen to these kids who come in, and you don't try
Mm.
to because you're just a bedpan guy. You're not. You're just listening to them and talking to them, and you have an effect on them that no one else here has. So I'm going to send you off. I'm going to teach you all these." So he sent me to a shamanic Shinto Japanese temple to
Mhm.
learn their medicine, and sent me to a Chinese um, doctor of acupuncture and herbs. He sent me
Mm.
to um, a Swedish, massage kind of place, and a few other Native Americans, and a few other, and also the Theosophical Society. So,
Mhm.
then he and I put together a protocol to deal with these guys because the first thing was when it got blown up, they had the helicopter to take them straight from where they got blown up to a place that could keep them alive, and then they'd
Yeah.
send them to a better hospital to like really figure out what's wrong with them and do a few operations, and then they'd send them to either Germany or the Philippines, depending on whether they lived on the East Coast or the West Coast, and then they would do
Mhm.
some serious medical work on them in either of those places, and then they'd send them to the VA in their neighborhood. But every time they would transport them, like from Vietnam to either Germany or the Philippines, that's a 15-hour airplane ride. They put them on morphine,
Mhm.
and then when they'd send them from there to America, they put them on morphine. So by the time they got to VA, not only were they fucked up, but they were addicted to morphine,
Yep.
and that
Which is even worse.
yes, because it got in the way of them getting better.
Yeah, and it's a lifetime
Addiction,
addiction.
yes, right.
Yeah.
And they did that on purpose. They wanted these guys to be totally fucked for the rest of their life. And then they gave them, okay, you're on. We're going to give you this stuff called uh, aldolphamine, which is what's it called? It's a substitute for heroin. It's the stuff they give you to get off of heroin. What's it called?
Oh God.
The American name, but it was
Not
invented.
ketamine, is it?
No. It's this is 1970s. Oh, what's it called? It's in my
Opium?
no.
No.
It's a medical name. It's it starts with an M. Um, anyway,
Mescaline?
no. But it was invented by the Nazis. It was called aldolphamine. After Otto, because he loved the shit.
Wow. Why did we choose this place to reincarnate?
I don't know. It's quite a carnival.
It's kind of annoying sometimes.
Boy, so that. But see, that's the thing. I'm out there in God's a nature preserve, and all these rich people came in, and they drive around in their four wheelers and motorcycles and speedboats and burn everything. It's like and spray
We love you.
you know uh, shit to kill the plants.
I know.
It's like so. But all it did, I could either like go nuts about it or double down on being patient. And then,
Yeah, and we're all the same as well.
right,
Like, there's stuff that I do that I'm like, Jeff would look at me like, really? Again?
yeah, right, exactly. So it's actually I've really because see I had that place all to myself for 18 years because I was so just far enough from a Walmart's, or you'd have to drive 40 miles to go to a Walmart. So, and there was nothing
Hmm.
in between, right? And so, and there was no cable, and there was no, it's Sawtooth Mountain, so you couldn't even have satellite dishes, and there was
Hmm.
nothing. All you could do is read books, play music, and write, or paint, or do something like that, right?
Yeah.
And none of these people could do any of that, and they couldn't even cook for themselves, you know. So then they
Oh, yeah.
So then they just, if you're not cooking for yourself and you're not going to a restaurant, then you're really eating shit.
Oh, yeah.
Frozen pizzas all night long. So it's just unbelievable because they're there, and for 18 years I was just talking to Mr. Bunny and Miss Butterfly and Doctor Squirrel, and
And it's funny because that's basically like heaven, really.
yes,
It's
that's where I
heavenly.
live. Heaven,
Yeah.
right? So it's but then they all came in and bought up everything and started to rip it apart, right?
Yeah.
And this place is so sensitive, so energetic. Um, in less than 3 years, they kind of came in at the beginning of COVID, 19 and 20, and everything is dying.
Hmm.
And when everything dies, it's like I took care of my
Yeah.
parents for you know I had nothing to do with my family, and then I they had a family business, and that's why everyone hates each other. And
Hmm.
I had nothing to do with them, so I kind of got along with everybody. So when my parents, you know, got forced out of the business and then were retired, they were in their 70s. And my father said, "You have to
Mhm.
take care of us." I said, "No, I don't. You know, fuck you."
Mhm.
And no, you know, your mother wants you. I said, "Yeah, good luck with that." So
Mhm.
I went away because I had shit to do, and I thought, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna go and take care of them because even though I had nothing to do with them, even though I wasn't like traumatized or toxed like my other brothers and sisters, because I was brought up by my unconditionally loving grandma,
Yeah.
I
You still
still
had levels of that in you.
yes, and I had they'd been around. They sent me. They had me do things that what I didn't want to do. I
Yeah, of
was
course.
just becoming the dude. And then they sent, instead of going to high school, and I was in a great school system, and I was going to go into that high school, and the girls loved me, the teacher,
Oh yeah, I
I
know what that
was,
feels like.
I was it. And then I got sent
Yep.
to an all boys seminary that was run by Jesuits, and that they had this honored system called fagging.
Okay, that sounds about 1950s,
Yeah,
1960s.
1961. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. And
sounds
I
about right.
kind of rebelled against that because I had no, I knew laws of gay people, but these guys, they were sadists. They weren't homosexuals.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
so, I did have a little toxic, but again, the guy, I nearly died there. But on the other side, I learned all about power and control because up
yeah.
until then, everyone loved me. I was like, first, I thought I was just, a moron or crazy or a dummy. But then they gave me a couple IQ tests and said, "Wow, this guy's it's just he's looking at things in a total different way." And once they
Mhm,
started asking me certain things, like I couldn't read out loud, but I could read like 5 books in a day, you know.
mhm,
But no
mhm.
one was seeing me read the 5 books in a day. So
Yeah.
and I couldn't write because I couldn't see. But once they taught me how to type, man, I could turn out some pretty interesting shit. So,
Mhm.
and that's what's been my life. Oh, he's just a dummy. Let's leave him alone. Or wow, he's like
Exactly.
off the chart. Let's just make him into something we want him to be. So
Yep.
yes, so I had a lot of that I hope. But see, I never really quite blamed my parents because I wasn't around them,
No, of course not. Yeah.
right? And and in the end, I always had this very analytical mind saying, well, yeah, all this shit happened. But if that didn't happen, I would not be thinking this way. And I wouldn't be seeing
Exactly.
that.
You'd be soft.
Right. I'd be soft. Yeah. It's like joining the
Yeah.
Marines, right? In a very strange
Mhm.
way. And I had to learn how to, like, man, once I started getting really attacked by that, my first year in that scene, I wasn't going to take it lying down. So if they're going to treat us this way, man, just wait to see how I'm going to treat you. Like
Mhm.
this most sadist priest there had polio, and I think that's why he's sadist.
Exactly.
And so without trying to empathize, I responded with, "Okay, so you're gonna fuck with us because he really, I mean, he tied me. He had his bullies tie me to a sprinkler pipe, and then they beat me with 2x4s, broke my ribs, broke my
Mhm.
leg, broke my wrist." When I called my dad from the hospital, "Get me the fuck out of here!" He says, "Oh, just tough it out." I said, "Well, you fucking tough
Yeah.
it out." Anyway,
Yeah.
so I said, "Fine, okay, if that's the way it's going to be." I snuck into his apartment. I learned how to pick a lock. You know, and they didn't even have YouTube. I had to like go to the guy who was in the
And you were unlocking parts of your brain as
right,
well.
right, exactly. As long as I
Yeah.
didn't break it, and I cut all his sticks, his canes, and his he had these things that he wore on his arms to hold himself up. I cut them right the most strategic place, and then I covered up so he couldn't see the cut. So this
Mhm.
whole school was made out of marble. All the steps were
Mm.
marble, everything was marble. So when he was going on a flat plane, those things wouldn't snap. But I was going down a staircase. The load
Mhm.
on those cuts, and I cut them at a
Yeah,
certain angle, was like
like knives.
right. So it just snapped them, and he would tumble down these staircases. And I did it to him 16 times.
Yeah,
So, I mean, but that's where I learned you can't fight City Hall. No matter how
yeah.
you're like Ukraine's a great example because they are going to, they already have destroyed Russia, the Russia that had existed before Vlad attacked them, and
Mhm.
and they are never going to be who they were ever again.
Mhm.
Meaning Ukraine, they're not winning this war,
Yeah.
and so that's and so you can't go there. Can't you
Mhm.
can't go there. So I learned
No,
that.
you want. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I mean, we're the same in that way. You want to know a funny story?
sure.
Because I used to get bullied constantly, constantly growing up, and one day I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try and be the bully back. I'm gonna try and show them.
Right.
And so I'm at recess and I'm like thinking who I should choose. Who should I choose to like go all out on? And I find someone and I'm like, yeah. And I go over and to pick on them. And then like I start
Would the person you bullied or picked, were they a bully?
I didn't know them. I just
Just
wanted to. I didn't. I just picked someone to show that
the bullies,
anyone
right?
to show that how I wasn't afraid
Right.
and I was willing to like do what everyone else was doing,
Right.
and so I start picking on them and stuff, and then I'm like, and they're like, oh well, do you want to fight? And I'm like, yeah, and then they turn around and I realize they're disabled. And
That is a good one. Yes.
I'm like, that's just the universe and me. And I'm like, oh, shit. And I'm
Yeah.
like 7 or 8. And I'm like, no, I still got to go through with this. And then they start chasing me. And then I just start running because I don't want to beat them. They're disabled. And
Right.
so I'm like, so now the weakest person is bullying
Right.
me in front of the whole school. Oh my God. Like, so that was the one time I tried to, like, okay, fine, I can do it too. And then the universe is like, no, girl, no. You, no matter how hard you try, you'll never be the villain.
Right.
Oh my God, it's so funny. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean
no,
that's I guess you have exactly what I have. I have instantaneous karma.
instantaneous. I
Yep.
always have had that.
Yep. Which is a good thing because
Very
it
good thing.
slaps you in the face, right? So you
Yeah,
and
and it's like you have gifts.
right.
What are you doing?
Correct.
You're wasting your time.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah,
So that's
but it's
when
just yeah.
all these things that most people would find. So in the neighborhood, right? So the guy who's really the most annoying, and he destroys things. He came onto my property and like cut everything down because he said it was too messy.
Mhm.
But the thing that was messy was my herb garden,
Yeah.
right? Now he thought they were weeds. Luckily, he
Yeah.
didn't spray it with Roundup, but he went in there with his weed whacker and he knocked it down. And it was right around the time I would have harvested them, and he did it for me. He just and he
Mhm.
left it there, and a couple of days later, I was there. I was waiting for it to go to seed after he cut it down, and I was picking it up with my little basket, my herb basket. He drove by and said, "What are you doing? What are you? Just burn that stuff. They're just weeds." I said, "No, they're medicinal herbs." And I showed him what they were, and I said, "See this stuff? This is Ellen-Campaign. This is like worth $1,000 a pound."
Mhm.
Oh, show me how to grow it. I said, no, it's a little more difficult than that. And so that's you know, I could have gotten really annoyed with this guy, but no, I just kind of because he does it to himself. Um,
Yep.
more than I don't have to hurt
Exactly.
him.
Bullies bully
Right,
themselves. People have no idea because I dated a bully for almost 10 years, and so I knew him better than himself,
right,
and it was just insane. I couldn't believe how much he bullied himself. I
right,
just
right,
couldn't believe it.
right.
The constant cycle of bullying and then bullying himself
Well, that's
is
like
crazy.
people who have eating disorders. It's the same kind of thing,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you have to deal with it in the same way too.
Hmm.
And
But it's
because
almost like like I said, like we have like this inner being of knowing, and it's just like we know it's wrong, but yet we won't accept that we're wrong, but yet we won't accept that we don't deserve what we're doing to ourselves. You know what I
right,
mean? Like
right,
it's just like constant hypocrisy.
right. We always make an excuse,
Hmm.
and that's why I keep saying we just need to do our best. We don't have to be perfect, just our best. Because trying to be
Yeah,
perfect gets you in that's when you become a bully and become run around.
overdo it.
Yeah, overdo it. Right.
Hmm.
So you just do your best because doing your best is when you try to be perfect, that's a different category. So you don't even try to do your best, you know, because
Hmm.
to try and to be perfect, you think you are perfect.
Yeah, and you think that you aren't as well. Like you
Right,
have to obtain it.
right,
And I'm obsessed with art and artists, all forms. And it's interesting how like people are like, I'm making a masterpiece, but yet some people do that on accident.
right.
Like it's just like we don't really understand what it takes for a masterpiece to be born. You know, like
Masterpiece
we
can
think.
only be born when you are in the moment of being your
Mm-hmm.
best.
Mm-hmm.
You look at all the, Van Gogh, Duchamp, Monet, all those guys. That's my favorite period. But I mean, even the ancient guys, and the middle age guys, they were all doing that. Da Vinci,
Mm-hmm.
um, all of those guys who were doing it, they were in the flow, doing their best, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so,
And what
yes,
hmm?
you go.
I was gonna say what I find most interesting is like about art is that there's so many different kinds, but yet only a very small percentage people think are worth something. Like there are some that are so you see online and you're like, wow, that looks like a photo, or you see like, wow, that must have taken them forever. But yet there's art that looks like a kid sneezed on a piece of paper,
Right,
and people are paying millions for it. Like that's what blows my mind about art is that some people are like, wow, it speaks to me. It's so incredible. And it's like, it's literally two lines of black marker on a white piece of
right,
paper.
right.
Like it's just, that's what amazes me is like, how come that person is so great and amazing in the art world? Like,
Well,
that's what blows my
well,
mind.
the art world is different than art. Art is that
Mm,
expression of the artist of the first person, um, in a literal form, whether it's painting, sculpture, poetry, theater, whatever. The what gives it its economic value is the critique, right? And so,
yeah.
um, and there's a tradition of it, going all the way back to Babylon, and it's basically if it moves the person who's been given the authority of saying what is good, right? And that's
Hmm.
taste, right?